Hello there and welcome once again to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett along with Kent Myers. We're here every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues, and today we welcome in someone who's not been on our show before.
No, and we, although he's not the first one to hold the position of Oklahoma Solicitor General, he now holds that position. Mithun Mansinghani is the new Oklahoma Solicitor General, started in March of this year. And I knew Mithun from other matters before he became the Solicitor General, when he was Deputy Solicitor General. And I thought it would be good for our viewers to get acquainted with him, to see what he does, to see what his duties are. And I think our viewers will be very impressed not only with his background, which is startlingly good, but what his duties are as well.
Mithun Mansinghani, our guest today on The Verdict. He's the Solicitor General for the state of Oklahoma. He's our guest.
In the early 1800s, Davy Crockett of Middle Tennessee was a neighbor to the Chickasaw Nation. He was a frontiersman who saw the sovereignty of Indian nations as the very foundation of this country, and Crockett took his ideals to Congress. So when President Jackson's Indian Removal Act came up for a vote, Crockett spoke from the heart.
4 counties of my district border on the Chickasaw country. I know many of the Chickasaws, and nothing should ever induce me to vote to drive them west of the Mississippi.
Crockett voted his conscience, effectively ending his political career. Indian removal became law. Davy Crockett left for Texas, and we took our future to Indian Territory. Chickasaw history is American history in the world we share today.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Oklahoma's new Solicitor General is Mithun Mansinghani. Joined the AG's office a couple of years ago as a Deputy Solicitor General. Was named in March of this year to be Oklahoma's new Solicitor General. Mithun did his undergraduate work at Rice University, did his law work at Harvard Law Review. By the way, he graduated magna cum laude from Rice, and at Harvard Law Review he was elected to the at Harvard Law School he was elected to the Harvard Law Review. He was a law clerk to a judge in the Fifth Circuit, was in private practice in Washington, D.C. for a year or so, and joined the Oklahoma AG's office in 2015. This is his first visit to The Verdict, and we hope it's not his last. Mithun, welcome back, or welcome.
Thank you.
We hope it's welcome back next time.
I hope so as well.
It's great to have you. Talk about growing up in South Texas and attending Rice University. What drew you to the legal profession?
Certainly. I was born and raised in deep South Texas on the border with Mexico in a town called McAllen. My parents are Indian immigrants, and they ended up there just before I was born. And the short version of what ended up getting me into the legal field was that my mom made me watch too much Law and Order growing up. So by the time I went to college, went to Rice, I already had law as an option in my mind. And after I dabbled around with a couple of majors, I decided that that's what I wanted to do, and graduated Rice a year early and went straight to law school. So I was a little bit younger than some of the other folks.
Did you specialize in law school in any particular area?
No, very rarely do people specialize in a particular area in law school unless they're doing something like patent law or tax, and I did not. But I knew that by the time I was leaving law school, the things I was most interested in were appeals and a field called administrative law, which deals with litigation against federal government agencies and the process surrounding that.
Now, the term Solicitor General is not unusual. It's well known, but I don't know how many people know what that job implies and what the tasks and duties are. So explain the Solicitor General's role.
Certainly. In the most basic form, a Solicitor General represents a state in appeals, and the federal government has its own Solicitor General that represents the federal government at the U.S. Supreme Court, and many states, though not all, have Solicitors General. that represent the state in appeals, especially at the state Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court.
Who appoints Oklahoma's Solicitor General?
So that's the choice of the Attorney General. The Solicitor General's unit is within the Attorney General's office and is one of several departments. And we're the department that mainly deals with appellate matters and constitutional issues.
What's the caseload like?
It's pretty evenly divided between what I would say is 3 buckets of cases. The first is appeals, as I mentioned. The second is constitutional issues, regardless of whether they're on appeal or at the trial court. And the third are the state's roles outside of its borders and pursuing the state's interests outside of its borders. So that means cooperating with other states or litigating against other states, and cooperating with the federal government or sometimes litigating against the federal government.
You said other states, many other states, I guess, have solicitors general. What about our surrounding states?
That's a good question. Texas has had a Solicitor General's office for a while, and they are a big reason why that inspired other states to hire Solicitors General. Arkansas recently appointed its first Solicitor General a couple years ago, I believe. New Mexico, I'm actually not that familiar with their Solicitor General's office, and Kansas has a Solicitor General's division, yes.
Now, your predecessor was now Justice Wyrick.
Yes.
How long did you work with him?
So now Justice Wyrick was Oklahoma's first Solicitor General. The position was created by then Attorney General Scott Pruitt back in 2011. And so I'm the second Solicitor General. I worked with Justice Wyrick for 2 years while he was Solicitor General.
So we haven't had one for very long.
We haven't had one for very long, although, as I said, there are some states that have been inspired to get a Solicitor General by what Texas had done in the early 2000s. There are other states that saw what Scott Pruitt did and the Attorney General's office did here to show how a medium-sized state like Oklahoma could have a big impact on the national stage through a Solicitor General office.
Talk about what your staff would be like. I know you're understaffed now because of a lot of reasons, but talk about what your staff would be if you had a full complement of people.
So yes, Attorney General Mike Hunter appointed me Solicitor General, gave me that honor, but we've had a lot of transition with the transition to a new Attorney General, and with, for that matter, Justice Wyrick leaving to the court and one of our Assistant Solicitors General going to go clerk for him. But normally we have about 4 to 5 lawyers in our office plus a paralegal.
And right now, what do you have?
Right now we only have 2 lawyers. I'm looking to hire up.
You're pretty busy then.
So I'm very busy. The 2 of us are doing the work of several more lawyers than just 2. So we're very busy, but we're also getting assistance from other parts of the office. Our criminal appeals division and our litigation division have definitely been helpful for us.
The United States Supreme Court recently saw the swearing in of Judge Gorsuch, and I'm told you have a relationship with Judge Gorsuch. You've worked with him?
Well, relationship would be pushing it, I would say, but last year in the fall there was a conference for judges at the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals and the lawyers who litigate in front of them. And now the 10th Circuit covers about 5 or 6 states, including Oklahoma. And they sit in Colorado, and this conference was in Colorado. And I briefly met Judge Gorsuch and said hello to him on one day. Well, the next day during the conference, I didn't really know a lot of people there since I'm relatively new to the 10th Circuit, and I was eating lunch alone in one of the restaurants inside the hotel. And in walks in Judge Gorsuch and several other people and sits down at a table. And Judge Gorsuch sees me eating alone. He knows that I know one of the people at the table, and he stands up, comes right over to me, and he says, "Would you like to join us for lunch?" And that was just an incredibly kind and gracious gesture from a judge who, I litigate in front of, and so, and I think at that time he was already on then candidate Trump's shortlist to be on the Supreme Court. And so for that person to come over to me and be kind enough to invite me to have lunch with him was wonderful, and I had a wonderful lunch with him. And I know from personal experience that he's an incredibly kind and gracious man, and so we're excited to have him on the Supreme Court. I also know from professional experience that he is somebody who's of the highest character and integrity and intelligence and faithfulness towards the rule of law. When we litigate in front of him, you know, he approaches issues fairly. He's not always on our side, but we always approached cases with an extreme amount of insight, and we appreciate that. I have another friend who worked with Judge Gorsuch on some small matter that on the day he was confirmed by the Senate last week, he got an email from Judge Gorsuch thanking him for his work. And again, this friend is just graduated law school, not somebody at all important, but Judge Gorsuch still took the time on the day he was confirmed by the Senate to send a friendly email to a young lawyer who had worked with him before.
Well, Mithun, I know that you spend a good bit of time arguing in appellate courts. That's one of your primary duties, I guess. You don't argue typically until the briefs have been filed. To what extent are you involved in the creation of the briefs that are filed from which you argue?
Brief writing is one of the main things we do in our office. There's an impression among non-lawyers that court lawyers are in the court all the time. And that's true with some lawyers, but it's not true with appeals lawyers. Brief writing is most of what we do, and part of the special skills that we bring to the office as a Solicitor General's office is writing lengthy briefs on complex legal topics. Things tend to move slower and get more deeper consideration in appellate courts than they do in trial courts. So a lot of what we do is writing the briefs. Occasionally, I will argue a case where I did not write the briefs. I think I did that just last month. But for the most part, we write our unit writes the briefs in the cases that we argue.
It seemed as Attorney General that Scott Pruitt was especially active in seeking cases, seeking justice, seeking retribution. Is that opinion valid? Was he especially active in looking after cases, looking after the state's interest?
I would say that's true. He was especially assertive in making sure the state's interests are advanced on the national stage, and that's not changed with Attorney General Mike Hunter. The nature of what we do might change a little bit because the federal government is in a posture that is more respectful to the states right now, and so there's going to be inherently less clashes. But this is, again, part of a larger movement among states in the last 15 to 20 years to assert their interests on the national stage and not just be concerned with the local and parochial interests inside the state.
Mithun Mansinghani is the Solicitor General for the state of Oklahoma. We'll have more with Mithun when we get back.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Welcome back to the set of the verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers. Our guest is Mithun Mansinghani. He's the Solicitor General for the state of Oklahoma.
Mithun, just imagine, if you can, a dispute between Oklahoma and Texas, perhaps as to the border and the location of the Red River and who gets what land. Is this the kind of dispute that your office would likely be involved in?
Yes, our office, among other parts of the Attorney General's office, just depending on expertise and skills, would be involved in that type of interstate dispute. And in fact, a few years ago, the state had litigation against Tarrant County, Texas on water-related issues. And that went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Solicitor General's office was involved in representing the state in that case, and we won 9-0 at the U.S. Supreme Court.
What was it about or what is it, I should say, about the appellate practice that got you interested as opposed to perhaps just the trial practice?
Right. Well, each part of the legal profession has different skills, and people have their specialties, and one is not necessarily involving more skill than the other. There's different skills. When you're a legal counsel, you have to have the skills to evaluate issues as they arise, whether you're counseling the state or a company or an individual, but how to avoid litigation and how to construct your behavior in the most legal possible way. When you're a trial court litigator, you're part investigator. You've got to discover different facts about the case and figure out how to create the narrative to help you win and persuade juries and sometimes judges in doing so. Appeals is a little bit more of a academic and intellectual exercise about what the exact contours of the law is or what they should be if the exact contours of the law haven't been defined. And that very much attracted me to appellate litigation. It was a very, very intellectual and very deliberate and nuanced and thoughtful way about approaching the law.
Do you have any case that you kind of either have now or see on the horizon that might take you up to the U.S. Supreme Court in an argument mode?
There are a couple of cases that are potentially might be heading in that direction. Some of them involve when you can test somebody's blood if they've been in a fatality accident to see if they were intoxicated. Others involve how much you can sentence a juvenile who's committed multiple very serious crimes, whether, if they continue to commit crimes or if they committed multiple crimes, you can sentence them multiple times, and what the constitutional limits are on that.
Tell our viewers how one would prepare for an argument either in front of the Oklahoma Supreme Court in Bank or the United States Supreme Court, and how that differs from perhaps trying a case in front of a jury or a judge.
Absolutely. There's a lot of preparation that goes into an oral argument for an appellate court, and it's actually vastly disproportionate to the amount of time you actually get to spend in front of the court.
You're over-prepared then.
Right, exactly. So, for example, for an argument that is anywhere between 15 and 30 minutes long, generally spend about 2 weeks preparing for it. And part of the reason why it takes so long to prepare for it is because you have to be ready for any possible question that the judge might ask you. It's not a little unlike being the White House press secretary. Anything can be thrown at you and you have to give the exact right answer. Otherwise, there might be negative consequences. And so you not only have to know everything that was said in the case and everything that happened in the case, but you also have to anticipate anything that might come into the judge's mind or that they might ask you. So you really have to sort of be prepared for every potential aspect of it. And then there's a more formal practice aspect to it. We also do what are called moots at the office and sometimes outside the office, depending on how important the case is, to get lawyers to act as judges and help us prepare, going through a rundown of all the questions they might ask and how you might answer them and how you might structure your answers in the best possible way. And that involves both wording them correctly and wording them efficiently. As I said, you have a very short amount of time up there, so you got to get your main points out there very quickly and before another judge can interrupt you with another question.
How important is it to be candid with the court and not guess and be able to say, I'm sorry, I don't know?
Absolutely. That happens on occasion. And it's better to be candid with the court and say, Your Honor, I don't know the answer to that
So
question.
how many times have you done that, Mithun? How many times have you said, I don't know?
I've actually done that at least once. That came right to my mind when Ken asked that. A judge asked me about a legal rule, and I told him what the legal rule was. And then he asked me, what the first case ever to announce that rule was. And I had to be honest with him. I made a guess. I said, maybe it's this, but I don't know. And he said, well, it can't be that. And I said, okay, then I really don't know. And
Shame on him.
No, I mean, he was curious about it, and it's a fair question, and it's fair to also say that you don't know the answer to every possible question.
Well, having a track record of candor in front of the appellate court will pay a lot of dividends in the future, I'm sure.
Absolutely. You know, our reputation in front of the Oklahoma Supreme Court, in front of the 10th Circuit, and in front of the U.S. Supreme Court is very important to us, not just in candor, but also in quality of representation. So that when we come to them and we say that this is a serious matter that they need to take up, they listen.
You've touched on it briefly, but how impactful is the state's budgetary issue affecting what you see at state government level in your office?
Well, it does generate some amount of litigation. We've litigated budgetary issues several times, and there's more litigation that's popping up. You know, as far as how it affects us personnel-wise, the Attorney General's office is able to bring in money to the state, more actually than we expend. And the same is true of the Solicitor General's unit. And the other thing about the Solicitor General's unit is that its creation and its maintenance allows us to litigate cases at a high level. So there's less of a need to hire outside lawyers when the cases reach those important stages.
Well, we had Scott Pruitt on when he was running for Attorney General, and he suggested that one of the things he hoped to do was to make the use of outside counsel a lot less prevalent than it had been in the past, and I take it that that is exactly what he did.
I think that's right.
Well, do solicitors general from other states, do you all ever get together to discuss best practices and cases that you've seen?
Absolutely. We get together quite often, not only about best practices as far as internal office procedures and how best to manage Solicitor General's units within the Attorney General's office, but we cooperate on cases all the time because oftentimes if a case involves our interests, it's going to involve the interests of another state. And you know, we might go in on a case as an amicus supporting another state, or they might come into our cases.
Friend of the court.
Yes, sorry, yeah, I should define that. It's an
that's all right.
amicus brief. Amicus curiae literally means friend of the court in Latin. And we oftentimes join in with other states in filing amicus briefs. Other states come in and file amicus briefs in our cases. So the level of cooperation is very, very high.
Do you interact with the legislative or the executive branch?
Every once in a while, yes, we do. You know, we appreciate when the legislature comes to the Attorney General's office to consult about, you know, draft legislation and things like that. And every once in a while, a legislator will ask a constitutional issue about legislation, and my office, my unit within the Attorney General's office, is able to provide legislators with advice on constitutional issues, and we appreciate that.
Do you all ever proactively see a law or hear about a law and say, I don't think that's going to prove to be constitutional while they're still working on it, or do you wait for them to contact you?
We generally wait for them to contact us, and we, you know, faithfully and vigorously defend the laws that they do pass. That said, the office, and this is not something that Solicitor General is necessarily involved with, but the Attorney General's office as a whole does sometimes ask the legislature to pass certain bills that help us do our job and help us serve the people of the state better.
And remind us where the office is, the Attorney General and the Solicitor General?
The Attorney General's office physically is located on 23rd and Lincoln at the southwest corner, near the southwest corner of the Capitol building. We have a separate building.
And you office in the Capitol as well?
Well, it's a separate building from the Capitol.
I see.
But yes, I office there.
All right. Mithun, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Good to see you
Mithun
again.
Mansinghani has been our guest. He's a Solicitor General for the state of Oklahoma. Kent and I'll be back with a final word right after this.
There are now 11 million of us who live here and work here. I was 15 when I came here 6 years ago. I raised my family here, drive my truck to my job every day. The only difference between now and 6 years ago, I do it legally. I wanted to, because this is my home.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be Mom and Dad to me.
I really think people are so unaware of the number of kids waiting just in Oklahoma. And I think if more people knew that those children were out there waiting, you know, I think that just by the way we live our lives and the people we talk to, that maybe we can help encourage adoption from Oklahoma.
You will always be Mom and Dad to me.
Journal Record is pleased to be a sponsor of the verdict. The Journal Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
It's a high-profile job being in the Attorney General's office in the state of Oklahoma.
Well, it's a high-profile job to be in the office. It's an even higher profile and high-stress job to be the Solicitor General. And obviously, Mike Hunter thought that Mithun had the credentials and the temperament, both of which are important, to get the job done, and he does. I've seen him in action. In fact, I've been in cases with him, and he is just he represents the state of Oklahoma in exemplary fashion.
It's been great to have Mithun Mansinghani on the show today as the Solicitor General for the state of Oklahoma. We have some website information. You can find more information about the Attorney General's office and where Mithun and Mike Hunter reside. It's at ok.gov/OAG. That's ok.gov/OAG. And we have a website where you can go and tell us about a guest you'd like to see on a future edition of The Verdict. You can also tell us about a topic that you'd like to see us discuss. And
let me interrupt and say we are going to have Mike Hunter, the new Attorney General, on pretty soon. We just were unable to coordinate dates, but that's upcoming.
Look forward to that. Mike Hunter has a lot of war stories through the years I'm sure he can share with us. We're out of time for this week's show, but thank you so much for joining us. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next week on The Verdict.